Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 760. My opponent kicked off with e4, and I went with d5, the center counter defense. So he took the main move, and I went knight f6, which is the way I like to play it. Queen d5, though, you can see is the most popular move here, and that's certainly a playable option as well. I just thought it's better to round the pawn up with the knight rather than the queen. And plus there's also some interesting gambit lines. If white plays, for example, c4, you can go c6 and get a good gambit that way. And the main moves here, as I mentioned in the video, are d4 and knight to f3. Looks like knight c3 is also a main move. But bishop to b5 check is also an interesting sideline. And I have seen this before. I faced this once in an over-the-board game at my local chess club. And at that point, I also decided to play bishop d7. So I guess bishop d7 is sort of a natural move. Knight bd7 with the knight blocking the bishop and pinned, it just doesn't look right, although the chess engine indicates that's playable as well. And then c6, this is a tempting move, but I don't think you get enough compensation for the pawn. You've turned it into a gambit. If you try to take back with a pawn to try and gain a tempo, you know, you're down a pawn, your pawn structure is a bit awkward, and this pawn is in the way of the knight. And on the other hand, if you take back with the knight, then you know, you're just putting the knight into a pin. So it seems like there's not enough compensation for the pawn to make that c6 move really a viable option. So that leaves bishop d7. And then and last time I faced this position, my opponent played bishop to c4. Just dropped the bishop back and defended the pawn. And I forget what I played at that point, but I didn't play the best move there. The best move is to play something like bishop to g4, although it looks like b5 is an interesting throw in that move there to kick the bishop around first. But bishop g4, you get the bishop outside the pawn chain with the tempo on the queen. And if he has to play f3, well, you know, you've managed to induce some kind of weakening. So that's why bishop e2 is interesting, because it prevents, you know, bishop c4 allows bishop g4, but with bishop e2 I can't play bishop g4. He's got that square covered. So this is a playable line as well, and it seems like the right response here after bishop to e2 is to play bishop to f5. So I guess the idea in either case, oh, maybe not right away. I guess you take first. After bishop e2, you might as well take the pawn first. And then he plays d4. This was in the opening book. And then here, bishop f5. And in both cases, you managed to get the bishop outside the pawn chain before playing the move e6. So it seems like that's the way to go for the best position. So I'll try and remember that. Try and get the bishop out on the king side and then move the e-pawn forward afterwards. So the way I played it, and also in the previous game, when I always faced this position, I just didn't play in the most accurate way, and I got a worse position. So white is better. Sometimes the engine evaluation, you know, ranges between you know, half a pawn and a full pawn advantage to white. So pretty strong edge for white, much larger than the normal opening advantage. And he's on the verge of winning several times in this game. So, but I always keep hanging on somehow. So he kicks my knight around, plays knight c3. So I think we get some good normal developing moves. It's just that you can see white has more space and easy development and control of the center. So basically white has gotten everything he could ask for out of the opening. Let's see, I went, no, he went knight f3 here. He's getting his pieces out. I castled, he castled, and I finally played c5. I have to, you know, try and create some space for my pieces somehow. And c5 is a good move. It's a good idea also because it helps the bishop, maybe gives it some things to do along this diagonal when the d-pawn comes forward. So sort of increasing the scope of that bishop. Let's see, he went with d5, which is a good response. And I went with knight a6. So I was considering this move, this is the chess engine recommendation, e6, as a way to fight. I was worried about this d6 move, but d6, I should have realized, just gives up this c6 square for the knight, so it helps my development. And and this is pawn, although it can be supported by pieces, and and white can hold on to it for a while. Eventually, I can probably get some mileage out of it. Maybe rook here, bishop here, trying to pile up pressure on that pawn. May be able to get something, some advantage out of that. So it's not like this pawn is going to be here forever. I'll just have to live with it for a while, I guess. So that would have been the best response. After knight a6, white's advantage is growing. Let's see, he played bishop g5. I went h6 to kick the bishop. And here's the first point where he starts to give back some of that advantage. The chess engine says he should just retreat the bishop. He could go to e3 or to f4. A couple of squares both those squares are good for the bishop. But instead, he took my knight. So now I have some problems, in terms of development still, and space for my pieces, but I have the bishop pair. So the bishop pair is a long-term advantage, and actually it paid off in this game. And let's see, he followed up with knight e4, also maybe not the most accurate move because it leaves this b-pawn hanging. In fact, the chess engine thinks I should go ahead and take right away. If I take and he plays rook b1, this is the line I was afraid of. He really can get the rook to the 7th rank, but the chess engine thinks this is okay. I mean, he can keep the rook there by bringing his queen to the b file, but it appears that this is playable for black, and it gives us an evaluation of about even. So he's let me back in the game that far if I play correctly, and I've gotten back to even. But I went with bishop g7, which is kind of a more natural way to play after knight e4. I mean, I thought about taking, and I just thought letting him activate his rook on the 7th rank couldn't be the right idea, but, well, the chess engine says it is. Let's see. So I drop my bishop back to g7. He goes queen d2, defending the b-pawn now. Go b6. He goes rook fe1, getting his rook to the center. All good developing moves. And now knight c7 maybe is a bit of a mistake here, too. Yeah, the chess engine wants to push on with e5. I can't say I like this move either, although it does give me some space. But, well, it blocks in this bishop, and he's got a protected passed pawn, so I'm going to have to figure out how to organize a blockade on that pawn. If I could easily get my knight to that square, but, that's going to take 3 moves to get my knight to the blockading square. In the meantime, he's already got his knight in position to just trade off. So, it's hard for me to see, cancel that, hard for me to see the advantage of that e5 move. But for what it's worth, the chess engine likes that. Let's see, I went knight c7. He went bishop to d3. So I went knight e8. I'm thinking of this journey that I drew in the previous line. I want to blockade that pawn and then push the e-pawn to e6 so I can trade it off and maybe create a weak pawn there. That's my sort of plan in this position. And well, he's letting me fulfill my plan, but at the same time he's organizing his pieces so they're all centrally located here. So it hasn't been bad for white. White is keeping an advantage through this. It's not until I play knight d6 where once again I'm in the range of equality here. After he takes. The chess engine says don't take. First pile up the pressure with queen f4. I really didn't think about this move, but it's a good idea. Now he's not only threatening to take, but he's threatening to win that pawn. And let's see, if I have to defend like this with queen c7, well, the chess engine just wants to drop back knight to c3 and secure the b-pawn. It's a funny sideline that trying to win that pawn by, let's see, queen f4, yeah, trying to win the pawn by trading the knight. Bishop takes, and then grabbing the b-pawn. I'm a pawn up for the moment, but after d6, actually, this is a winning position for white, and you can see the power of those centrally located rooks, and actually black's position completely falls apart there. So queen f4 was a move that could have been played without having to worry about the loss of the b-pawn there. Anyway, he didn't do that. He just took the knight off. And then after this, the chess engine rates this as about even. White has more space, and I have these pawns are kind of cramping my position, but I have the bishop pair. and so that's compensation for this somewhat worse pawn structure. And you know, it's not that much worse because I don't have any backwards pawns on open files that he can attack. There's only one open file, and the pawn structure is symmetric. The main difference in the pawn structure is just that white has more space there. Anyway, let's see. He played h3 here. I went rook e8, and so this is a mistake. I should have played queen f6 first before opposing on the e file. The idea was correct. You want to oppose on the e file. You don't want to allow white to have free run of that file, but you should get the queen out of the way first. And I can do this with a tempo because I'm attacking the b pawn. He plays b3 and then rook to e8, and still in the range of equality. So rook e8 directly, this is not as good. It's a little bit slower. He gets a rook to the e file with tempo. Plays b3 anyway because he doesn't want to have to worry about that pawn all the time. And I end up in this position, but I'm just not quite as active over here as if I had brought my queen out to f6 first and then opposed rooks. So he gets his queen to f4 and then attacks my pawn. So slight edge for white through this portion of the game as well. See, I go queen e7 defending, goes g4, go queen f6. So step by step I get my queen back in the game and offer the trade. And as we saw in the game, the endgame is favorable for black because of the bishop pair. I eventually will be able to create some open lines for those bishops, and as the position opens up, those pieces, the two bishops, are going to become more powerful than the bishop and knight. So he keeps the queen on, which is a correct decision, and then I go queen a1 check, and this is something that he should not worry about. King g2, and then queen back to f6 is the chess engine line. I really can't afford to take that pawn like I did in the game, and this is all even. So the game is all even at this point. But when I take the pawn, white actually has a winning attack here, and I forgot. Actually, it's just a blunder on my part. I forgot the d6 pawn is hanging, and is a very difficult situation. You know, this is a loose pawn that he's going to gang up on. He eventually wins it. If I tried to defend it in advance by playing bishop to e8, he can kill me with this queen d8 move. He's threatening to take the bishop, which is pinned, and if I defend it, I can only defend it with the king. He can bring in the d pawn and win it anyway. So that bishop e8 is just not working at all. You know, I played the relatively best move, queen b3, but this should all be winning for white. So let's see. He went bishop e2 here, so he didn't have to do that. He could have gone for a line I talked about in the game. He could have gone for this bishop takes g6. So it's not really a sacrifice, because if I take the bishop, he'll take my bishop, and if I counter-sacrifice, this is what I thought might work. I was going to try this, but it turns out it doesn't work. So queen b8 check, and the king can't run anywhere. His bishop is guarding all my escape squares, so I have to block with the bishop. Then he can take here with check, get another tempo move. He can come here with check, and then take here with check, and it's just a winning attack for white. And notice that he's 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, the pawns are still just even, but my queen is out of play is the big problem, and he's got a knight poised to jump in, and my king and bishop by themselves are not strong enough to ward off the attack. So there's a winning attack for white in that position. Let's see. So going back to bishop takes g6, I probably have to just take it. I can't go for that line where I try to get a pawn back by sacrificing my bishop on g4, and then well, he can just take here, and then I can grab another pawn this way, but eventually this is winning for white. He can drive my king here and then bring the knight in, and I just can't really hold everything together. Queen 3 to defend there, and then he starts pushing the d pawn, and you know, at this point I have a majority of pawns over here on the queen side, but they don't do me any good. They're too far away. His pawn is much closer, and so he's going to win there. So when he retreated with bishop e2, this helps a lot, although I think he's still better here. We'll come to the point where I get an edge finally. Will still be much later. Let's see, Queen A4, defending the bishop is better than what I played. Bishop to A4. I was trying to be active with the bishop, but I probably needed it back here to control some squares around the king. It wasn't a huge difference, but slightly better to play Queen A4 there. Goes Queen B8 check, drives my king here, and then he takes on A7. And then I go Queen C2. I'm holding on to the bishop, which is under attack. I'm hitting his bishop, and I'm trying to gang up on the C pawn. He dropped his bishop back to F1, so he's defending the C pawn. I guess that's really the only square it had to go to. I go bishop B3. So this doesn't really work, but black doesn't have anything better either, so it was a decent try. And queen takes F7. I thought this was a bit of a mistake. I thought he had a better advantage by taking on B6, but the chess engine rates those two as about the same. If he takes here, I can take this pawn, and then after the trade, he can play Queen B7. So he can hold on to his pawn, I can hold on to mine, and his pawn is more dangerous. I guess that's the way to look at it. So anyway, there's an advantage to white in this position. It's hard to tell with the computer evaluation if it's a winning advantage or not, but definitely white has the better chances there. Let's see, he went Queen F7, which the chess engine also thinks is a winning edge for white. And let's see, I take on C4. We get this trade. And then he played knight to H4 directly. And this allows me some drawing ideas. So this is the mistake that kind of gives away the game. Although it's hard to see the difference between that move and the winning move. The winning move here is first queen to E6. And I start pushing my pawns forward, and now knight to H4. And this sequence wins for white. So just funny how these little differences add up. The thing is that the knight H4 move looked good, but when he played knight H4 immediately, it allowed my queen into the E4 square, and that's what gives me the drawing chances. So you'll see this technique the chess engine uses, very nice. Queen E6 first is really just designed to keep my queen out of the E4 square, and it's sort of saying, well, I can't do very much. Black has nothing better to do than to push pawns, and they're still a long way away. And now knight H4 comes with a big threat. And now let's see, Queen D3 trying to defend the B pawn, and white can start pushing D6, and white is a tempo up. White queens. Let's say I went through the whole sequence here, but you can see that white queens first. Let's cancel that. Actually, the chess engine line is to first take on G6, and after this trade, sacrifice the queen there and then get a new queen. And I'm one step short of queening. He has time to come back and stop that pawn from queening, so that's a win. So anyway, knight H4 immediately gives it away because I do have this move, Queen E4 check, and this is a drawing line. There is a way for white to draw this just by bringing the knight back to F3, and then in this line, queen goes to D3 again, staying behind this pawn, trying to keep it from advancing, and the queen goes to E6 to support it, and now B5. It's like the same line, but black is a tempo up. And the queen is in position here to stop the pawn. I guess it's more about the fact that the knight is not putting any pressure on G6 there too. Knight on H4 attacking G6 was always something that allowed him to sacrifice and get that pawn queen. So Queen E7 creeping forward so he can queen. And then this line, he queens, I exchange, and then queen myself. So we both have queens, we both have the same number of pawns, and the chess engine rates it a draw. So that was it. That was his drawing chance. When he goes Queen F3, he actually allows me to go into this endgame which is slightly better for black. Even though I don't have the bishop pair anymore, when there are pawns on both sides of the board, the bishop is often stronger than the knight, and I think this is the case, plus the fact that I have a pair of passed pawns which can support themselves and make progress. So it's not clear that this is a win. I'm going to start going through the rest of this a little bit faster. All I can say is that from this point to move 44, the chess engine gives a slight edge to white. So to black. So I have some kind of edge here, but maybe with precise play, this endgame can be held by white. And he plays okay for about 10 moves here as we push our pawns forward. He uses his knight to blockade my pawns, and I use my bishop to blockade his pawn. And then right here, this is kind of the last chance that he has to get some kind of position that he can hold. After king e4, which is the move he played, I'm actually winning the whole rest of the game. So the way he could draw is by playing knight d4. So this is a nice move. Look for these moves with your knight. It's stopping these pawns from coming forward unless I want to sacrifice one of them. And at the same time, it's stopping my king from going to this square, so I can't easily round up his pawn. Let's see, the chess engine gives a line where I sacrifice by pushing c2. I suppose another possibility I could think about is, bringing the bishop forward and bringing my king in. But if I do that, then I lose this pawn. He can attack that pawn. Yeah, it's just not going to be easy here. So, yeah, the chess engine recommends c2. Sacrifice that pawn, push this pawn forward, knight comes over here to a3, drive it all the way to b2. Now the knight is tied down defending the b1 square, and my king can come over. Let's see, he can bring his king forward. My king can come over and round up this pawn. And this is a position where white has some edge, but I don't know if it is a winning edge. It's possibly a position that white can hold. In any case, the chess engine evaluation was not conclusive. It gave a slight edge to black, which often means in an endgame that it's actually a draw because black can't really make any progress. But back in this position, instead of playing that was really the only move, knight d4. Instead of playing that move, he played king to e4, which is pretty natural, especially when you're low on time. You want to bring your king to the center and go after these pawns, protect your pawn. That's where the action is. So it's correct in spirit, but maybe not in detail. Allows my king to get over here a little bit quicker, and I'm just winning the whole rest of the way. So at any point he can say right here he can win a pawn by taking there, but I will trade off his knight, and yeah, I guess he can't really win the pawn. After the king takes, this pawn comes forward, so he's kind of stuck over here. Yeah, I didn't realize that during the game, and so he started playing with his pawns on this side, but eventually I can either take his pawns, or as happened in the game, I can allow him to trade off my bishop. Yeah, actually he didn't go for the bishop trade. Where was that? That was right here. Drove my king back. Yeah, that's a fork. He could have taken the bishop, but once again his king is stuck over here, and my king can come forward and round up these pawns. So yeah, I don't think he can win that endgame either. That's a win for me, or even draw it. So he tried to stay active with his knight instead, but eventually he can't hold on to everything. And I was able to grab these pawns on the queen side, and he resigned at this point. But it's, oh no, he ran out of time at this point. But it is a definitely winning endgame for black. So anyway, interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you again soon.